You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. Welcome to the show. The interview subject prepared for your listening pleasure is the one and only Dino Cazares. The catalyst for the conversation with Dino is a new album from Fear Factory. It'll be released on June 18th, 2021, and it is titled Aggression Continuum. Heads up. We'll either break the internet with this one or nothing will happen at all. There's a lot of reveals. I anticipate that if it breaks outside of my usual listenership, there will be some curious people who tune in, wanting to know more about Dino's thoughts on all things related to Fear Factory. So here's the tip. I don't interview. I have conversations. With that, here he is. Dino Cazares from Fear Factory.
It's all good.
It's all good.
You're my last interview for today, so.
Oh, sweet. What time is it in LA?
So it's 5:37. So it took us 7 minutes to link up. Where are you right now?
Gold Coast.
The Gold Coast. I love the Gold Coast.
Well, it's probably the part of the world. I've been to Mexico and I've certainly been to Southern California. It's almost vis-a-vis. It's basically the same. And the further north you get, it's just Hawaii. So, part of the world that I think you're probably both familiar and comfortable in.
Well, yeah. If you go to the Mexico part, then it would be great. Get great Mexican food.
Yes, indeed. We're getting a little bit more of that here now. Not so much Mexican food. I know it's a completely different continent, but yeah.
There's one that's not that bad.
What's that? Guzman and Gomez.
Guzman and Gomez. That's the only one.
Yeah.
There was another one called Mad Mex. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, it was a bit shit.
Yeah, shit. Yeah. I tried that one too. It was not good. Guzman and Gomez was probably the closest thing to anything that's close. That's good. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah. There was one called Montezuma's for a bit, which is more like a Central American and South American blend. It was basically everything mashed into one. No.
There's actually one in the UK, which I'm surprised they haven't made it to Australia yet. It's called Mission Burrito.
Yeah, I haven't heard it. Yeah.
And that's really good. That's California style Mexican food. It's really good. They're in the UK, and it's actually a guy from San Francisco went over to the UK to start it.
Well, it's authentic then, I suppose, isn't it? And hey, let me share
and he brought people over with him too, some Mexicans. He brought some Mexicans to cook.
I don't know what it is about SoCal. This is back in the late 90s, early 2000s when I was over there. But I found as an Australian, I bonded with the Hispanics and the Mexican people. They were on my level. And the other thing is the food was the same. It was fresh fruit and vegetables, which a lot of the Americans don't bloody eat. Did you find that too when you came to Australia? It was fairly similar to the cuisine you used to?
Yeah, I like going to the markets to go buy fresh stuff. I have and the reason why I even say that, because the first time I was going there, I was like, I'm looking for some fucking fresh jalapenos. And you guys just don't have them there. But you guys had some other peppers that were really good that the Indians use.
Yes.
The Pakistani Indians, is what I'm talking about. So I found some other kind of chilies. But then I ran into a friend of mine who ended up starting growing jalapenos for me. So every time I go, she has them fresh there. And I can't necessarily bring them because you can't bring the seeds across, right? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't bring them.
Plenty do though. Don't worry about that.
Oh, I mean, I do, but look, I'm in a band. I don't want to get caught just for bringing some fucking jalapeno fucking peppers across and getting thrown back or getting fined. However much they find you. I don't remember, but it was a good hefty price tag for trying to sneak in stuff. So a lot of times I would claim it or declare it, as they say, but they would still throw it away. They would throw it away.
Yeah. My mother-in-law is from the Philippines, so I've got to say she chances her hand, but she declares everything that she brings back. So it's up to the customs officer whether or not. It's not like, with all due respect, you always see the Chinese nationals. You just see it. You've probably seen it when you come into Australia. The Chinese nationals bring bags full of shit like food, and they do get singled out because they're bringing back stuff that needs to be in quarantine and they're not declaring it. But they're just
something that could be something that could contain coronavirus. Sure.
Bloody coronavirus. Bloody coronavirus.
Yeah, but what I noticed is that I could bring hot sauce only if it's sealed up.
Yeah.
I could bring hot sauce. I could bring cans of jalapenos, as long as it's not open or nothing like that, just seal in the can. So I could bring that stuff, and that was cool because I started doing that. I started bringing this habanero sauce that I could just put on everything, you know.
I hear Burton's in Australia at the moment, so that's not my question.
I heard that too. I heard that too.
Yeah, I don't know whether he's living here or whether he's just hanging out, but you're probably aware at this point in time, we are literally 100 kilometres down the road from me at Byron Bay. There are literally thousands of Americans these days. There seems to be some sort of a mass migration, particularly of these A-listers and these Hollywood type of people coming and living here at the moment. Is that something that is talked about in Los Angeles, that these people are sort of leaving there for here?
No, not that I know of. I mean, the only people I know that go out there are either the wealthy, want to go on their vacation, or people working in the movie industry, because I know that they're down there filming a new Thor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm sure that brings in a hefty crew as well.
I imagine
American crew is what I meant to say. But no, I don't really. Usually, when I'm down there traveling or touring, I usually don't run into a lot of Americans at all, unless they're like some sort of military or they're out there for some other reason. But I rarely run into that in Australia, and I don't want to run into other Americans in Australia. I want to hang out with the Australians.
Yeah, I understand the feeling, because when I'm offshore, I don't want to hang out with Australians.
One of the things, I understand. One of the things that I noticed over the years of just traveling and being on the road and touring is that how Americanized the rest of the world is becoming. Yeah. And I kind of don't like it, because I kind of feel like some of those other countries are kind of like, wanting to adapt too much to the Western world, as they say, or they're kind of losing their culture a little bit, and I don't like that.
I would absolutely agree with that. And I've got to say that in the last, probably ever since the social media age dawned, so 13, 14 years ago or so, particularly I've got to say, a lot of bad ideas that are coming out of the US. It's like this colonialism of ideas that's coming out of the States that's infecting things like the education department and the like, intersectional politics, all that sort of shit.
Yes, I noticed that too. But ever since the last president that we have, a lot of the other world presidents and leaders have kind of tried to follow that kind of motto of what would they call it? Politicianist.
They're populist. They're populist ideas.
Populist. Yeah, and I hated that. I hated that too. That our president at the time here was infecting that kind of mentality on politics and the rest of the world. I kind of hate. I was not into that at all.
Yeah, it makes being an asshole okay, doesn't it?
Yeah, I hate that. But what can you do? I've voiced my opinion about that stuff before. A few years back, when we were doing press for Genexus in 2015. I got a lot of backlash for my opinions on the president, but I was getting a lot of death threats. So I kind of just stopped talking. Yeah. Because that was at the time he was promoting like Mexicans were bad people and we were rapists and all kinds of stuff like that. And, build a wall and things like that. So whenever, me being Hispanic, voicing my disdain against the presidency, I was getting a lot of death threats, people telling me to go back to my country, things like that. But whatever. It was just, internet threats.
I interview, George Lynch, of course, the great guitarist George Lynch from Dokken, and he's done plenty of his own stuff. About 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Very much influential in my playing.
Yeah, magnificent guitarist and a great guy, I got to add too. And I had a conversation with him, and probably we spoke for about an hour and a half or thereabouts. It was a podcast, because I host a podcast series. And I reckon about 5 minutes of that was talking about his disdain for Trump. Get this, that was 4 years ago. Blabbermouth is still referring to the conversation all these years later. It was only in January or February, actually more recently, I think it was April, that there was an article, because I've got a RSS feed set up, ping every time the podcast gets mentioned, I get notified. I can't believe it. And it's because other artists and other media outlets keep referring to the things that he said on the podcast. But of course, you can imagine what George's perspective on Trump would be, that he's an arsehole and that he's illiterate, and don't know whether he said he's illiterate, but, alluded to that this guy wasn't very smart. But I saw the comments, mate. And my ultimate view on all of these things is that we live in a liberal democracy, both you and I. You can say whatever you fucking want. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting yourself up on a pedestal to be punished, though.
No, but you kind of are, because you're leaving everybody else to give their opinion too about what your opinion was. So that's the beauty, and also the demise of our social media, is that, everybody, just because what you say may be right or wrong, there's always going to be somebody out there with a different opinion, and some of that stuff could really backfire on you, and never like if you're, especially a guy like George Lynch or myself, who said those things back in 5 years ago. That stuff's there's going to be always somebody there to bring it back up. Blabbermouth is the probably number one that never lets it go. I've had many conversations with a guy from Blabbermouth who runs Blabbermouth. Yeah, and I've said, he's giving me advice like, hey, maybe you should say this because it's going to come back to you. Well, it's going to be someone like you who's going to keep bringing it back. I would always tell him stuff like that, but once you say it and it's out there in the world, it's never, it's always going to be there.
Yeah, and you're not wrong.
And you can get you can get canceled in the court of public opinion, even if you just get accused of something but never convicted of anything. Still, the court of public opinion has that opinion about you, and it can definitely ruin your career. And that's why a lot of people are against this cancel culture thing. You know what I mean?
So, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jordan Peterson's talked about it. Joe Rogan has had a lot of guests on his excellent podcast where they've been diving into that and dissecting it from a perspective that comes back to public policy and how it does impact the laws that then get made through the Senate and the Parliament. And we've got a lot to be worried about, mate, on that front there, because a lot of these hardcore lefties right now.
Well, there's a lot of guilty until proven innocence. Well, I think it should be the other way around. Innocent until you're proven guilty. Yeah. You know what I mean? That goes for everybody, not just, something that I might have said, but that goes for everybody. But unfortunately, in the way we are, the way we've been over years and years and years, and just now, it being more accessible on social media, your opinion. So, you can automatically get destroyed just if something goes viral,
Yeah. I understand your perspective, and I've just written a book, and I've talked about this quite extensively through the book, but it's the fans' fault. And allow me to explain. Bori and Blabbermouth and Metal Injection, they're out there. They are what they are. We can't do anything about it. They'll report on what you and I say or whatever, myself and Gilby Clark from last week. It's going to happen. But if the fans have got to stop being motivated by gossip and stupid innuendo. Like at the moment, I noticed that the trending items are people are searching for things to do with yourself and Bert, okay, rather than the new album. So it just seems to be human nature, whether you're an old woman reading Woman's Day or a 15-year-old tuning into Blabbermouth. We love this sort of controversy.
Look, ever since I was a kid, my mother watching the soap operas on TV, drama sells. Drama is what motivates people. Sex and drama. Things like that. People like looking at other people going through some sort of suffering, or somebody banging somebody else's wife or girlfriend, or just things like that. Reality television, or what people think is reality television. You know what I mean? All that stuff, and just how even for the first early cop shows. People like seeing all that stuff, and it's just there, and it's never going to go. And unfortunately, it's always been there, but now it's just way more accessible, and people have been able to give opinions about it forever since social media, since the internet. You know what I mean? But now it's just completely gone out of control because everybody's so reliant on their phones, and they're reliant on what they hear, that they're able to give instant reaction.
And you've been there for all of it, but you've been there for all of it. You've seen the transition and been in the spotlight through that process.
Yeah. And I get my fair share of, a lot of people giving me shit because, one person might have said something negative about me. That one person, going back to Burton C. Bell, like when he saw the GoFundMe campaign, he tried to sabotage it, which I don't know why. I didn't understand why. Obviously, he was hurt. by something. I don't know because we haven't spoken in the last 3+ years. So I don't know what he's going. I can only quote by what he's put out there. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people ask me, "Why do you think you quit?" Like, I don't know. I can only go by what he said in the media. You know what I mean? And what he's tried to do to me. You know, he's tried to take down the GoFundMe campaign, which is kind of weird because he's only benefiting from that as well too. So him trying to sabotage it, I don't get it. He was just, I guess, if he's going down, he's trying to take me down with him. I guess. It's the only thing I can think of.
You strike me as you're very charismatic. You have very strong leadership skills, I think it must be said. Bert strikes me as a guy who's very sensitive. Do you think that that's a fairly accurate summary of both of your character types?
Yes, very much so. I could say that I'm more of a head-on kind of guy. Like, I take things on head on, you know what I mean? Where he's kind of more of like, it needs, either he tries to ignore it or it takes him a long time to settle the issue. Yeah. I usually like to take care of it because I don't want it to keep lingering. I don't want to keep thinking about it. Like, oh my God, blah, blah. I like to just take it head on, and then boom, it's over. You know. So, but you know, some people handle those kind of situations differently. You know what I mean? But for me, it's, you know, people can cry and bitch and call me names and blame me for everything. And that's okay because I understand that some people are grieving and some people need a scapegoat, right? But I'm lucky that I'm a strong individual. I can handle it. I can take it. And I've been taking it, right? I'm also very accessible on social media. I'm out there. You know, I'm accessible for them to, for fans to, you know, lash out on me because, you know, he's not a very social media guy at all, really. And I know he doesn't get involved in answering fans' questions and stuff like that. If he does, it's very minimal, but he doesn't do it much. But for me, I'm there. So I'm answering these questions as best as I can. You know what I mean? All I know is that, look, when it comes to creating music, I believe in myself. I believe in my idea. I believe in what I create. And I like to dive into it head on, right? Whatever it is I'm committed to, I dive into it. And I don't fear change. I don't fear where my future is going. And I don't fear what people say. I don't fear it at all. I can handle it. I know that sometimes it's the moment. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. But at the same time, I know that I can't succeed without some sort of failure, right? So for me going forward, I have no choice. The guy quit the band, so I gotta move forward, right? And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to present it in the truest form that it was from day one, from when I first started, when I started the passion and the love for this band, and it's still there from all these years. Because have been journalists who've asked me, "Is it all worth it to you? All this shit that's gone on, you know, all these lawsuits, all the money that you guys lost, you know, all the bankruptcies, the divorces, and the broken relationships. Is this all worth it to you?" And I always tell them, yes, it's very worth it to me because my passion has not died for what I created.
Resilience and perseverance come to mind.
There you go. There you go.
The application, the way you've been able to apply yourself.
But there are some people out there who want to tell you what you can't do. They want to tell you can't do it. You can't move forward. You can't move forward. You know, you're never going to find another replacement. Just give it up. Give it up. Turn. You know, go start a new band. Blah blah blah. You know, people tell me that all the time. But that's what drives me. That's what motivates me even more, just to prove them wrong. Because I know that what I'm going to deliver after this record in the future, what I'm going to deliver is just going to be amazing Fear Factory stuff you're going to hear that you always heard. Nothing's going to change.
That's a very good point. Okay, and I'm gonna talk about the album a little bit now because that's a good springboard into that. Because my question for you, and I couldn't figure it out, so it's a legit question, and I'd love to hear the answer. Because I couldn't work out whether Aggression Continuum is a reinvention or if you're further refining that signature Fear Factory sound, the triplet picking, the machine gun bass drum, and the clean, gruff vocals. Which of the two do you think it more aligns to?
I think what it more aligns to is just continuing what we did from the very beginning. Obviously, when we got to demanufacture, we redefined our sound compared to the first record, right? And it's progressed from there. Yes, there's been many different angles that we brought in and tried and stuff like that. And I'm going to keep continuing experimenting with music, of course. I'm going to continue bringing in different elements into this record, into the future records. But on this record, like for a song like Recode, there is a big orchestral feel to that song.
Yeah, it's soundtrack.
It's a very soundtrack quality, exactly. And that is because one of the things is, one, I heard that. Two, trying to explain that to someone else, trying to explain your idea to someone else doesn't always work. Well, we had this guy named Igor Krishkov who used to be in a band called Yes. Okay. And I was like, I think it needs this. I got it. And like, this guy's like a multi-talented, Russian trained musician. He's a Russian. And he's just like this super gifted prodigy kind of guy. And he just fucking wrote that thing like in, I don't know, the next day it was done. I was like, holy shit. Like there was actually a lot more stuff there. And I was like, I think we need to take some of this stuff out because there's so much stuff going on, right? In his mind, all that works, right? But maybe not exactly to everybody's mind. So I was like, okay, we need to remove some of these elements that were just, so much going on. And but it worked out great. The combination worked out killer. And those are the different type of elements I like bringing into the music. The last time that we touched up on anything like that was during a song called Resurrection.
Yeah.
That was when we actually had the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra come in and record with the band. That was amazing. We couldn't record it because, we couldn't actually videotape it because these guys, this orchestra was moonlighting. In other words, they can't take any other gigs when they're getting paid by the fucking government, the Canadian government. Yeah. They can't be doing moonlighting and doing other gigs. So we couldn't videotape it, right? And so we couldn't document it on video, which just sucked. Okay. Unless we would have put masks on everybody while they were, doing everything, but they wouldn't go for that.
yeah. Slipknot before Slipknot sort of thing, because that's 1997 or 1998.
Well, no, I was making a joke, like we wouldn't want to put masks on.
I know, I get that. No, I get that. But, like, it hasn't been done though, has it? Masks on orchestras yet. Corey Taylor's probably trademarked it already.
But yeah, I mean, I like to moving forward. I want to bring as many different elements as possible. I mean, once we announce a singer, it's full steam ahead. But there's no rush. It's not going to happen before this new record comes out. The main focus is the new record. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you who that was at the moment. Anyways,
that's fair enough.
That's the kind of thing that is going to be an announcement. As a matter of fact, we might even do a live stream where we announce the singer live stream and maybe even answer a few questions and then maybe do like a few songs so you can see how well this person sings with the catalog. You know what I mean? And then maybe introduce something new and then maybe take a bunch of questions because I know there's going to be a lot of questions and people are going to want a lot of answers. And I think it's going to be fun. I think it's exciting and I can't wait. Because it could bring a whole new element to Fear Factory, a whole new chapter to where I could go somewhere new. I'm not going to say different because some people don't like the word different. You know what I mean? Some people are afraid of the word different. So I would say somewhere new and creative, and somewhere new, or maybe a lot of the same. Who knows? I haven't really gotten there yet. So, but I'm excited to see what's to come.
I did listen to your conversation with Jasta because it was a lot of insight that you gave to Jamie there. And it was very interesting to hear your thoughts on your philosophy about finding a new vocalist. You wanted to go with somebody, and this is my word here, a rookie, rather than get a known singer in. But you also went into extraordinary detail talking about how you've dealt with bloody band members crying beside buses telling you they want to go home when they're on tour. So it is a balance, isn't it? No doubt you've been through the ringer, but
Well, you just have to deal with people. It's people. It's just people in general. Look, some people may think I'm a hard ass because I'm not going to give that guy a hug because he's crying because he wants to go home. You know what I mean? Somebody may think that I'm insensitive, but I'm not necessarily here to coddle musicians. You know what I mean? I'm here to because I take my work seriously. I want to go on the road and I want to entertain, and that's what my life is. And if somebody can't handle it, then they're gonna crack. You know what I mean? And you don't want that. You know what I mean? Because obviously, fans cry when somebody quits the band for whatever reason, right? They cracked. They can't take it anymore. They leave. And it's always like the surviving members are the ones who have to deal with all the shit, right? Not the one who actually left. So that's one of the things you just have to deal with musicians. That's how it is. But of course, when we find a singer, I didn't necessarily mean amateur. Obviously, they're going to have some sort of talent. I guess it would be like the American Idol, right? Yeah, these guys are amateurs, they're unknown, but they obviously have talent and they're being trained, right? And then they got to be prepared of what's to come after that. They're going to have to be putting records out. They're going to be taking photo shoots. They're going to have to stay in shape. They're going to have to keep their throat in shape. They got to be on tour. They're going to be doing press all day. They're going to be doing media, blah, 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 and all that stuff that comes up. Sure, you want to make sure you hire a guy that can handle all that. Remember, also, that guy is going to have, that person is going to have to be, he's going to have to be mentally strong as well, too. Because remember, he might get a lot of backlash because he's replacing somebody else who's been there for 30 years. So you got to make sure that guy can handle it. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Derek Green from Sepultura. He got a lot of shit from the Sepultura, from the Max Cavalera fans. He got a lot of stuff, and he was a strong enough individual to take it. He's still taking it. You know what I mean? He still hears it here and there. You know what I mean? He still managed to keep his composure, keep his professionalism, and go out there and do it. You know what I mean? Every night. And I commend a guy like him who had to deal with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that poor bastard. Yeah, I know. I got to say, the interview that he did with me was the one that Gloria got involved in and sent the missile across to him over. I asked a fairly honest, fairly simple, basic question with him, which is that why do you think fans keep on asking for this reunion? Because it's clearly not going to happen. And also, Derek's been in the band, I think, 3 times longer now than what Max has been. And I'm a fan of both, so don't get me wrong. It's not, I don't take either side here in that way. They're both crafting great music these days. But yeah, Gloria really fucking let him know about it via a social media text. And all he said in response to my question was that, well, it's just hard for people to move on. And that's fine because people love that era. And I guess it's the same for you, though, mate. I mean, you definitely. I have seen the comments. We've talked about it up top there about the Blabbermouth side of things, but I guess it's just part and parcel of what you've got to deal with when you do change things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, you're always going to feel like you're on the defense. You know what I mean? Because you always want to prove somebody wrong, and I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I say, it matter what they say. At the end of the day, it's matter what the music sounds like, and if it sounds amazing, I think people are going to love it.
Right? You're right, but it's not just you've worked with professionals like Tim Young from Hate Eternal, Morbid Angel, and there's a few other bands that he's been in, but you worked with him as well. And your comments about your relationship with Tim are out there for anybody to read. I get that. But it really, honestly, it just seems like it comes down to the personality. And I'm a musician. I don't know whether you can see the basses and guitars behind me, but musicians are bloody hard people to be around at the best of times. and when you get somebody or a group of people, and hopefully at this stage in your career, people know that you know bullshit and are only drawn to you because they want to live for the metal and they want to play the music that you've crafted over the years. But it's never easy. Reality is it's still never going to be easy, is it? And with all due respect, there will probably be new issues with the people that you surround yourself with moving forward, won't there? You've just got to be prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to be prepared with all different types of personalities. You know what I mean? And once you're living with the person in a small confined space, compared if you were roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? You're in a smaller space than that. You're basically living in a room together. You know what I mean? So you're really up close. You're really, really there with the person, and you really get to know the good and the bad. You know what I mean? It's okay. You know, if you really like the person, you learn to deal with it. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much what happens. You know, I've learned to deal with Burns issues for many years, right? And I assume same thing with him with me, right? But it always seems like, I guess he's always the one that's quitting. He's quit like 3 times now already. So so I always felt like he was looking for a way out. Maybe he was hoping one of his other bands would take off and get big, and that he would, just could easily say goodbye to Fear Factory, right? But now, I guess just all the legal stuff. Some people just either you survive or you don't, right? And that's just pretty much what happened. For me, that's how I see it. But moving forward, I don't, bring it on. I'm ready for the challenge. I'm ready for whatever any fan wants to say or ask or whatever. I'm up for it. I'm up for it. Well, I think that at the end of the day, when people hear the music, they're gonna go, okay, it's not Burton, but it's fucking killer. And okay, I like the past 30 years of what the band created, but listen to this new shit, man, it's fucking killer. Okay, maybe it's not, it doesn't sound like that, but I like where Dino took the band, took it to somewhere new, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think you've done that, because I think Aggression Continuum is your strongest album since Mechanize. But I also think potentially in the longer term it might even be a stronger album, because it's got the essential ingredients, that soundtrack quality that I think you've been aiming for a long time. I think exactly for the reason with the Russian fella. I think that's why you've nailed it. And I also think that this album could be, when I say that, your best album since Obsolete, which I think was a game changer for metal in general back then. A lot of people put focus on demanufacture, and indeed the follow-up remanufacture. I'll ask you about that a bit later on, about the impact that had. But you do have a number of firsts in there, and I think what you did, you blended a lot of that that mechanical sound that you had with some more natural stuff and Obsolete. And I think you're doing something similar here now, but with the orchestra and the heavy material. And I'll make this. I'm going to shoot on another point in here, that people don't realize how much of a game changer I think Obsolete was, because it was the first time, particularly in 1998, heavy metal was about as popular as a turd in the punch bowl back then. There was you guys, Cradle of Filth, Sepultura, and there's one. Korn, I know you're mates with the guys, but they're not a metal band, if you know what I'm saying, whereas you guys are. You know what I'm saying?
Well, a lot of metalheads didn't like them, though. And I know what you're saying, but a lot of metalheads didn't like them.
Yeah, they don't have credibility.
They did have a crossover.
Yeah, they do.
You're probably right about that.
But it's Strapping Young Lads, Sepultura, Cradle of Filth, and some of the black metal stuff, and of course you guys. I saw mainstream people wearing your t-shirts. Short guys with hair like mine, short hair or what have you. But this is back then when metalheads were about very identifiable, camo pants, the whole works. But you go to a university campus and you'd see a pretty standard looking girl or guy wearing a Fear Factory Obsolete t-shirt. That's the devil in the detail. That's the impact.
You started to see us on television shows, like posters, and like if a family had a kid, the kid had a poster of Fear Factory in the background.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like Sopranos, the guy's wearing a beanie. The kid's wearing a beanie, a Fear Factory beanie. Yeah. I think what it was demanufactured definitely made a statement saying, okay, here is a new sound that people have not heard. And that's why it had such an impact, right? It was, all the reviews were 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. But when Obsolete came out, we were kind of answering to all the backlash that we got on demanufacture. Now you're thinking, like, what backlash?
Yeah.
Well, the backlash was that people thought that it was not real musicians playing that. They thought the drums were programmed, and they thought my guitars were sampled, which it wasn't. Right? We were a live band, so we were like, okay, we're going to give you something fucking live, and this is going to be what we interpreted live to be like. So we made steps on Obsolete to make it more organic as possible, but we're still having all those electronic elements involved, right? one of the main things that we started was on demanufacture. When you do a click track, it was one tempo all the way through. So if it was a 190 BPM, it was 190 BPM all the way through. So if you take a song like Shock and it starts at 190, but then it dips down to 185, goes back up to 195. So we gave it an organic tempo change. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
So the tempo in the
it's got groove.
So the click track had yes, exactly, made it more groovy. But the click track made it more natural. So it had ups and downs, like a human played it, because no one's that perfect of a drummer where you're going to be perfectly on a click track without having a click track, right? So that was one of the steps. One of the other steps was using live kick drums, snares, and tom samples. In other words, Raymond recorded the drums, and while he was recording the drums, we also recorded a snare solo, kick drum solo, and a tom solo, and we used those as the samples. So it's just his organic kit, him playing his organic kit, but using those as the samples, which is killer, right? And just things like that. We actually gave the album cover a more earthy tone. So you see the brownish yellow, black, you know what I mean? So it gave it more of an earthy tone, as you would say, dirt or whatever, right? Just to make it look organic.
Yeah, and I think it connected with people on a gut level that way, and even that iconic imagery, the brain connected to the spine.
Yeah, but that was, but hold on. Even like we were even made conscious decisions. Okay, let's try to write a song where we don't use double bass, because everything prior to that there was double bass, except maybe one or two songs, right? But if you go, we were like, okay, let's make Edge Crusher, no double bass. Okay, no double bass. We got it. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do Descent, no double bass. Okay, we got it. Let's do another one, Resurrection, no double bass. Okay, cool, we did it. You know what I mean? So we were actually consciously trying to write songs without double bass and and it was actually harder, believe it or not. You know what I mean?
I bet.
To not do some sort of kick pattern and some crazy shit, right? Yeah. We didn't want to make a groovy record because we felt that everybody was saying that Demanufacture was cold and had no emotions, no feelings, and it was just this fucking piece of steel on. So we wanted to actually make something more organic and groovy, and something more, in a way, kind of, you can hear the maturity of Obsolete as well, right? And we couldn't have written a song like Resurrection if we hadn't gone through everything that we've gone through prior to that. Writing Demanufacture, going on the road, hearing fans' criticism or the love for the record, blah, 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 blah. And it's listening to all that, and even listening to journalists, because there was journalists where this whole story and concept went way over their heads. They were like, okay, this is just too much. It's too much for me to enjoy. I guess some of these journalists were like, they gave it like a 4 out of 5 and an 8 out of a 10 and a 90 out of 100. Whereas Demanufacture got all straight A's, right?
Yeah.
But there was some weird thing where Obsolete was just too maybe mature, maybe darker, maybe the concept was just too brutal, and it just went over some people's heads.
It was Terminator 2 to Terminator 1, if you know what I'm saying. It was that follow up, but I thought there were a lot of linear things that connected it too. So it doesn't surprise me what you say there, but I thought it was an epic follow up that are bloody hard to write. It's incredibly difficult to follow up an album. I mean, look at, with the greatest of respect, Metallica following up Master of Puppets. What did they do it with And Justice for All? Doesn't sit well with people these days. It did back in the day. We all thought it was godly, but I think your albums. Up to, and with the greatest of respect, up to Digimortal, they've held up, if you know what I'm saying. That period when you're out of the band didn't make any sense because you were the face of the band. And it was very hard for myself as a fan back then to understand what the hell was going on. So I tuned out. But that triumvirate that you've got there, including the remix album and EPs that you did as a part of that, they all still stand up.
Yeah, well, we always again, our motto was not to fear change, not to fear and experiment with different things.
Hmm.
Now, not all experiments work. I mean, obviously, you listen to a record like Transgression, that experiment didn't work. I wasn't in the band at the time, but that thing did not work,
No,
right?
neither did
But if you
Archetype, to
listen,
be honest. But yeah, continue.
but
Sorry.
if you listen to Fear's the Mind Killer, which is like industrial techno dance, fucking heavy, brutal metal grindcore mixed with
Hmm.
fucking insane heavy vocals, right? And that seemed to work, and people saw that and heard that, were kind of shocked, but at the same time very intrigued by this new sound, right? Not that other bands like Godflesh and Ministry weren't doing remixes, but maybe not as extreme as the tones that we had, right? So a lot of people were like, at the same time, the people who were kind of scared of it ended up liking it because it was so original and out there, and it ended up being the bridge to Soul of a New Machine to demanufacture, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, at the time when it first came out, they're like, "What the fuck is this?"
Mm.
But then, again, it opened doors for us because like songs like Scapegoat and like Scum Grief remix, that thing was played in all the clubs, all the metal clubs, all the, the techno club. I'm not techno clubs, but industrial clubs and metal clubs were playing those songs, and so those songs were translating well into the metal community. So they ended up accepting that sound. So when Demanufacture came out, it was like fuck. It was the holy grail of that type of music that was going on at the time.
Mm. Scum
And
Grief.
also obsolete was our answer to what was going on at the time as well too, because there was a lot of bands that were coming out like very much like in the Corn era, where a lot of more groovier stuff was coming out. We were like, okay, we're going to give you groovy, but we're going to give you our type of groovy.
Yeah, yeah.
And you got songs like Shock with the kick drum pattern. That's like, you don't hear that in groove, but now you do. But back then, you weren't hearing anything like that before. That stuff was pretty groovy and pretty fucking heavy as fuck back then too.
Yeah, you definitely unlocked that code. We talked about Corn before, but that new metal stuff that was going on back in the day, which to be frank with you, never associated you guys with until I listened to your conversation with the Suicide Silence guitarist, and then I understood how entrenched you were in all of that stuff. But you seemed 100 kilometers away from that stuff, but that's clearly not the case.
Yeah, no, I do still feel that we're miles apart from that. But I'm not just saying. What I'm saying is that I'm just socially aware of what's going on out there as well too during the time. I was very socially aware, and I was like, okay, it's like, you want groove, we're going to fucking give you groove, but we're going to give you our type of. I'm not saying I'm copying Corn. I'm not saying I'm copying anybody else. I'm just saying, like, okay, a lot of the kids were going towards the groovy stuff, and I was like, okay, let's make something more organic, and let's make something fucking groovy as fuck, and that's what we did. That's exactly what we did. We had the full intentions of that, but at the same time, we also gave the Fear Factory fucking electronics and the industrial sounds, and also we gave you the fucking futuristic fucking man versus machine concept. Man was becoming obsolete, so we gave you this fucking dark story of a concept. You know what I mean? And yeah. We there was connections. There was a Ross Robinson connection between us and Korn. We had completed a record with Ross. Obviously, it didn't work out, but Ross was able to shop that record to other bands, and he shopped it to Korn. In other words, he was showing Korn, like, look, I can produce your band. You could sound like this, right? And so it was perfect. It was a marriage made in heaven for Korn and Ross at that time. You know what I mean? Whether we started that, I don't know 100% for sure. Whether Korn was influenced by what they heard, I don't know. But I can say there was a connection there in between. Not necessarily because we were first, right? But I think that their connection was to them was from Ross showing them our demo.
There you go. Hey, I want to go back to the two albums that I mentioned where you weren't in the band, if that's okay, just to talk about them for a sec.
Sure.
Archetype and Transgression I've no idea if there has been a dip in album sales in that period of time, or a dip in interest in the band, because you came back in fairly quickly afterwards, and things just sort of seemed to resume with Mechanize as you sort of left off with Digimortal in a lot of ways. But do you consider those two albums that you weren't in the band for, are they Fear Factory albums, or is that a separate thing in your view?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that question. I think that it's definitely, I have to recognize that it's part of the catalog. I do have to recognize that, right? But I would say, Transgression. I mean, Fear Factory, Archetype was definitely, you hear they were writing on some of the influence that I had left before that. So they were still writing on that influence, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The band did take a little bit of a dip on Archetype. On Digimortal, we were at our peak. We were peaking like pretty high on Digimortal, right? We had reached that status of playing in front of 5,000 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they went back down to smaller places during Archetype. There was kind of a big gap in between the time I left. That was a 2-year gap. It wasn't that big, but it was a 2-year gap in between. Sure. And there was I think the band had dipped a little bit, but then again, in Transgression, it just fell like a piece of shit. It just fell really hard. Yeah, I mean, I recognize they're part of the catalog because I do say that this is our 10th studio record. So in order for me to say that,
sure,
I have to accept the fact that there were 2 records without me, and I do.
Are you on speaking terms with Christian?
No.
That's a relationship that's never going to rekindle?
No.
A lot of water that has obviously still got to pass underneath the bridge for anything there to happen.
I think the water's dried out.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because of water, at least if there's water, you still have a chance.
Yeah, I get
you. There's no water there. The water's just died. It's just dead. It's dried out. There's dead fish in the water.
Is that similar for Raymond as well?
I reached out to Raymond. No, he was not interested. Yes. Recently.
Yes. That's interesting. Yeah. God, I've just got a massive case of deja vu then for some reason. I feel like we've had this conversation before. It's very strange. I was just, from the fans' perspective, here comes a Sepultura question. They want that. And promoters have no doubt reached out to you and said, here you go, here's the golden trinket. Do you think if I know it's not about money, I get that, but you still have to survive, and if you've got kids, you've still got to pass on a nest egg and allow kids to go through college and that sort of stuff, or even extra other family members that might be dependent in the future, this sort of thing. But would it just be down to money? And I don't have a problem with that, by the way. I know people out there get their knickers in or not over this sort of stuff, but if enough money was dangled in front of you, could you make it happen?
That doesn't mean, but it doesn't mean it's going to last long. First of all, you're trying to get 4 guys who don't like each other together for any amount of money. Doesn't mean it's going to last long, or it might not even make it to a whole tour. So why bother?
Yeah, no, I understand. I play devil's advocate with this stuff here. I'm stoked.
No, I understand. Hey, look, I love these questions. I love these questions because these are going to be consistent questions that I get asked all the time. People ask me differently. You ask me very differently. And I would say that no, because there's too much baggage there. I don't know if Sepultura ever sued each other like that. But I don't know the full story there, but I know that our story, lives were ruined. Lives were changed. Lives were at jeopardy. Careers were at jeopardy, because of these lawsuits and stuff like that. So whether anybody can forgive each other for that, that's a whole other thing. I don't know. I don't see it for any amount of money. But if we did do it for the money, would that be fair when there's no charisma on stage? No one wants to be there. Would that be fair to the fans? I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
Fans think, of course, it's like a fantasy football league. You want to put your favorite band together, your favorite team together, right? That's all it is. It's a fantasy football. It's a fantasy football league. That's all it is. And it's going to remain a fantasy for now. You know, I'm never going to say never because you never know what's going to happen. But I can say now, to get four members that don't want to be with each other, don't want to hang around each other, don't want to be on the same stage with each other, that wouldn't be fair.
My perception, and I could be wrong here, is that Christian thought he owned the brand IP. If that is the case, why do you think he came to that conclusion?
What do you mean by the brand IP?
Meaning the intellectual property about the brand. With you out of the band, he became...
I think it's what I think about IP addresses and shit.
Oh, right.
What?
Intellectual property, as in the logo, this sort of thing, because that is a lot of what the time it does come down to, who owns what. And that's the situation with Sepultura, and that Max did give Andreas the brand IP.
Well, it was yeah, well, the thing about it is that the thing is that anybody could sue you for whatever, right? And that's what held up the name for a long time. You know, the judge was just going to wasn't going to let anything go until we got to the bottom of it. And it just took years. That's just the judicial system here. It just takes forever to settle things out, to work things out. But I don't know what. I guess he thought that. I don't even know, to be honest with you. I can only go by what the lawyers say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess Christian might have thought he owned more than he probably did. You know, he's not an original member, as you know. A lot of people think he's an original member. He also didn't perform on Demanufacture, which a lot of people kind of think he did.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah. So people are like, oh, we want the classic lineup from Demanufacture. You know, it's like, well, that would be just us three. Me, Burton, and Raymond. That would be the classic lineup of Demanufacture. But I don't know what he thought he owned, and it was a bunch of bullshit if he did think that. But obviously, that's what his lawyers were pushing for. Didn't work out. We actually have tried to sit down and have conversations about mediation. About trying to put the band back together and stuff like that. That was something that me and Burton were actually offering to those guys to come back, but their demands were just insanely stupid. It was so high. It was like nobody would benefit from it. So that idea got tossed out way back in 2015.
Yeah, okay.
6 years ago.
But you've got a good bunch of guys around you. I've spoken to Tony, and he strikes me as a stand-up guy. And you've also got Mike on drums, who's in a bunch of other bands too. But he's obviously your go-to. But the other thing is, and from the fans' perspective, you are a very charismatic guy. Use the term a rock star. You're in the public domain, but you're still a person. And like we've spoken about so much, you've still got to try to bloody get along with these people and all of the emotional baggage that they do bring. And I'm going to back you big time on this one here, Dino, based on what I can hear on Aggression Continuum, because I got to say, I thought this was a make or break album for you personally, meaning that for the brand,
for me, I feel every record is a make and break record, every record. And that's how when I go into making a record, that's how I look at it, because I always feel like I have to prove the saying, once you make it to the top, it's hard to stay at the top, right? And my mentality is like, once I create something that's at the top, I got to try to stay at the top. And it means that I have to take a lot of sacrifices and everything I got to do to make sure that record is that top quality level.
Please take what I say as a compliment there. It's not meant to sound like I doubted that you had the ability to, come through with a killer album.
No, that's not how I took it. That's not how I took it at all. That's not how I took it at all. But you said it's a make or break record. For me, every record is a make or break record. Every record.
And it's that attitude that I think keeps the fire going, keeps the fire stoked. Because without it, the old rest on your laurels thing. Iron Maiden did it when they had Blaze Bayley in the band, and they failed terribly. They were relying on at the worst period in their career. They were literally, I hear through the grapevine that they couldn't even book a tour to Australia that was pushed out from 1995 to 1996 to 1997, then never happened during that period. You've never had that. And I think that also says that metal, the times have been a bit kinder to metal since the the mid-90s, which were just atrocious. So that's a question for you. Playing a heavy metal band in 1994, most people would have just said, what the hell are you doing? Nirvana or Pearl Jam or Stone Temple Pilots are the thing. But I think something you did, whether you did it on purpose or whether you're going to do it anyway, but it aligned with the times, that marriage of metal with electronica. And you were one of the first bands to popularize that, which was then picked up, and here's a point, by Jazz Coleman. Killing Joke, Millennium, killer album. Do you feel that way, that people gave you a lot of shit for being in a metal band in the mid-90s or early 90s, I should say, and then you were proving them wrong through that period as well?
No, because we were really, how do I say it? In LA, there was a big melting pot of music, right? Music comes and goes all the time. So when bands like Nirvana, early Nirvana, I mean, me and Burton had went and saw Nirvana in small clubs that maybe hold like 100 people. You know what I mean? Small punk clubs and stuff like that. So we were feeling that energy way back. Helmet, Nirvana, Melvins, early Melvins, Tad. We were all into that sub pop bands, early Soundgarden, that Ultra Mega OK. Those records were heavy records to us. That was before this was before those bands reached commercial success. You know what I mean? So we seen the music change, but we seen another rise in music too. We saw a lot of the bands like Ministry and Skinny Puppy probably being at their biggest they've ever been at that time. You know what I mean? The New World Order, what's it called? The Psalm 69 was a great record for Ministry. Too Dark Park, Skinny Puppy, early Nine Inch Nails was coming out. Nine Inch Nails with the Downward Spiral. That record, those records had a big influence on our writing. I mean, a song called Flashpoint, that drum beat in the beginning of Flashpoint was very reminiscent of March of the Pigs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were very much influenced by all those bands. So we saw that shift. We saw that alternative type of sound and scene shift into that as well. Besides the the commercial bands from Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Nirvana, we saw that shift, but we also saw a lot of other metal kind of go back further underground. I'm not going to say those scenes died, but they went further back underground. Like the thrash metal scene was gone for a little bit. Bands were taking their hiatus at that time. And did I feel that we were a part of that? No. I did not feel that we were a part of that at all. I thought that we were more of the shift that was going forward because we were more influenced by those other bands like Ministry and Nine Inch Nails and things like that, and Godflesh and Skinny Puppy and all those bands that were like playing big, 5,000 seater places, and they were growing at that time. So we always felt that we were a part of that scene, even though a lot of my riffs were very reminiscent of some early thrash and metal stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we were blending it with newer things, and so we always felt that especially when Demanufactured came out, we felt that we were something new. We knew that we introduced something new, and so we never felt that we were a part of something that was dying. We felt that we were part of something that was growing.
Yeah, looking back, I can see that. At the time, I just thought you had Metallica in 1991 just blow the world apart with the Black Album. Then there was you guys and Cradle of Filth and those other bands that I mentioned afterwards. It just seemed like that was the natural success, but it got harder and darker courtesy of grunge. And I think that did open the door. I don't think Nirvana get enough credit, not because they did it on purpose, but they opened up the door for bands like you guys at a commercial level. People were more attuned, and going back to that conversation when I was at uni back in 98 and saw the regular people with Obsolete t-shirts.
I guess Nirvana opened a door for us. I'm not sure. I looked at more as Metallica and Ministry and Nine Inch Nails opened more of the door for us than Nirvana. But I guess if that's how you see it, that's cool. I don't mind. I mean, because I like Nirvana, so. But I could say that we were there. We saw early Nirvana, early Helmet. I was really more into Helmet than I was Nirvana. Way more into Helmet.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
So I really liked that. I really was really into that because they had that groove. They were still heavy. You know what I mean?
John Stania, man.
But their first Nirvana record with the song "Negative Creep" on it, that was a great album, and that's like with some very cool stuff there. When I wrote the song Scapegoat on the very first Fear Factory record, a band like Helmet, that groove was really what helped inspire me to write the groove for Scapegoat. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Page is a great guitarist. Actually, he sort of disappeared a little bit now. I know they're still sort of around, but they're a band that I thought.
Helmet's coming up on tour with Ministry and Frontline Assembly.
Yeah, I know. I got to be honest. I just feel like the vibe's gone, and I think that's just. I could be wrong. It's just. I think it's just Page these days, isn't it? And
it's just Page. I don't know. Some people have the passion and drive. He's still doing it. So I'm curious to go see how it is live. It'd be at the end of the year. So hopefully that tour really happens still.
Yeah, I had tickets to the Australian show here, which was cancelled because of COVID. So they're definitely active. Yeah, I just don't hear much on socials about them for some reason.
But even though in LA, like the scene was changing, like the glam rock was pretty much going back to where it started, back in the infancy stage. And then this whole new sound came in. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just like that Sub Pop, all those bands from the Seattle era were getting big. I mean, there was like, again, Trent Reznor had his biggest hit, I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal. That was electronic. That was a whole electronic thing. And so I felt that we were part of more of that movement. So I never felt like us playing metal was taking a chance at all. You know what I mean? I never felt that. And it's kind of funny. That's the first time I ever got asked that question. Okay. I've never felt that I never felt that we were ever a part of the dying metal scene at that time. Okay. I don't want to use that word dying metal scene, but it just because certain bands reached a certain peak and then they just kind of went back down just because of how much the music shifted, the scene shifted, just the market in general shifted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying. Don't worry, it makes complete sense. It's the only place I think thrash never went out of fashion and traditional metal was Germany. That just seemed to be the place where Saxon could go and play 15, 16 dates. But everywhere else in the world, particularly here Australia and the US are virtually vis-a-vis these days, as you know. You've been here often enough. But
but you guys sometimes get things a little later. Sometimes things hits are a little later.
Yeah, I don't know about now though. I think now it's very sort of enmeshed because of social media.
When I was going back there in like 93, 94, and even 96, I noticed that some things were a little later. You guys were getting it a little later than we were.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, there was definitely this feeling like as if it was stuck in 1968 or something like that. It was just for a period of time there. Hey, I've got one more question to ask you that I've been wanting to ask you for many years. So here it is.
Okay.
What's the biggest misconception out there about you?
Me personally?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I'm hard to work with. That's the biggest misconception. The reason why I say that is because I feel like, I've been called the control freak, right? I consider myself to be more of a leader. And if you can't jump on board, then I take what I do very seriously. I take what the music I create, I take it very seriously. And if you're not going to jump on board, then I don't have time for you. If you're not going to be there, then if you're not going to take it as serious, I'm the first guy in the studio. I'm the last guy to leave the studio. You know what I mean? There's a different mentality. I always try to explain it to Kobe and Shaq. I don't know if you're ever a fan of the Lakers. I don't know if you understand.
Yeah, I know
the basketball team.
But
they had a very hard relationship, right? The relationship took a toll. Kobe took his craft very seriously. He was there. He was practicing his craft. Boom, boom. Whatever he was weak on, he knew that he needed to work on. He worked on it. And he was there every day. First one there, last one leave, blah, blah. A guy like Shaq didn't care. Just came in, very talented, but didn't care. He had this one big issue. He couldn't make the free throws. Couldn't make them. And it would bother Kobe all the time because they would always foul Shaq because they knew he wouldn't make his free throws. So why didn't Shaq work on his free throws, right? And Kobe had a big issue with that. Look, you're fucking up the team because you don't go into practice and practice on your free throws. You don't take it serious enough. That's where I sit. I'm the Kobe. If you're having issues with something and you're weak on something, practice it. Take care of it. Work on it. And so if somebody doesn't want to be there, oh, I can't go to practice because of my girlfriend, because of my wife doesn't want me to go. I don't want to drive that far. I don't have gas money. I don't,
Oh, gosh,
whatever excuse you can think of, I don't have time for it. So because of that, people may be like, I'm hard to work with. Well, right. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Another one is that we're rich. We were not rich. We are not rich. We make a living, writing music, putting out merchandise, so on and so on, touring around the world. We are not rich. So a lot of misconception is that people think we're rich.
Yeah, I look, with the greatest of respect to you, because you deserve to be rich, but yeah, playing this sort of music is always going to be a grind.
Well, just music in general. If you don't have that big commercial success, music in general is this music business is up and down business. 1 year you could be doing great. One album you could be doing fucking a lot of money. Second record, not so well, and then you're just back down to fucking scraping by. It happens to a lot of musicians.
I know I said that was my last question, but I'm compelled to ask this question because I have admired you from a business perspective for a long time, and that staying power that you've got. But have you thought about passing that on to the next generation through a management or a consulting business?
I have. And as soon as I'm done with my music career, writing music and being in the studio and going on tour, that was something I definitely thought about doing for sure. And a lot of bands have asked me.
I imagine that there's a wealth of knowledge there, mate, that a lot of bands could tap into, and that fork in the road moment that a lot of young bands come to, you could shepherd them down the right one.
You know who else is really good about that too? It's Dave Elson. Dave Elson's great about that. I listen to a lot of his stuff that he talks about, and it was like, because he's been through a lot of shit too. He's been through a lot of stuff. And so I read his books and I get into a lot of his YouTube stuff that he talks about. And I can learn a little bit from that as well too. So I like a lot of the stuff he says.
David's a tremendous individual. You probably know him. I've spoken to him once, done an interview like this, and he just strikes me as a very centered guy who's learnt from his mistakes and now applies those learnings in his career.
Yes, but a lot of things in this business is very unpredictable. So you just don't know how an individual is going to react. I mean, he works with Dave Mustaine. He doesn't. You're not exactly sure what's going to happen tomorrow.
Oh God, yeah.
Nothing against Dave Mustaine, but I'm just saying it's like they've had their ups and downs for many, many years as well too. So
Dave Mustaine is one of the greatest musicians that ever walked the planet, but he is one temperamental bastard. I've even experienced that personally when I've met him, and he's just the way he is. I mean, he's ferocious, isn't he, in some respects, and he's gentle enough.
He's also given me a lot of advice way back in the day. And when he was first out of Metallica, I ran into him when I was a kid and I was 17 years old, and we kind of developed a relationship. Well, I don't know if I would really call it a relationship, but it was just like a small type of friendship to where he gave me some advice and stuff like that, and helped me along my way in the beginning of my career.
He's about the same age as you, or is he a bit older?
No, he's older. He's like 58. I'm 53.
That's interesting. I don't think that story's out.
Yeah, it's not the first time. It's not the first time somebody asked me that either. Recently,
about Dave Mustaine.
The age.
Oh, the age. Yeah, mate. We're all getting. I noticed I've got more lines and everything else. It's crazy to think. It felt like yesterday we're all in our 20s, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm very much. I'm older to some. To a lot of musicians that are coming out now, and I don't mind that. I mean, I've learned. I've gone through a lot of experiences. It's just life, man. It's just life. You know what I mean? That's what it is. Every day we're thrown with new challenges. And it's just how we handle them.
And I think you handle them better than most, I've got to say, Dino. So look at that. I think before I don't want
this to be a sad interview. It's just gonna. You know what? We got a fucking sick record coming out. It's gonna be out June 18th, and it's fucking insane. You saw the first video. first video, we got some guys from Finland to direct this video. I wanted to make it like a little mini movie. I had to be creative because we don't have a singer to throw in there, right? So I had to get creative, and I thought this was the best way to go.
Great video. It's a fantastic, for people who aren't aware, it's a movie, effectively.
It's a movie. Yeah, we're hopefully going to do part 2.
Nice. It just suits you guys. All of that I call it the Terminator stuff. I know it's not.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All that Black Hawk Down shit.
Yeah. This actually was a combination of 2 things. Yeah, Black Hawk Down. Exactly. This was actually a combination of 2 things: Terminator Salvation and Black Mirror. It's called Metalhead. The Metalhead episode.
I remember it well. Yeah, the drones.
The drone. Well, they're dog drones. Yeah.
Dog drones. Yeah. But I remember it.
Yeah. So it was a combination of those 2 things together.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you've got that fire, man. It's as we get older. You remember this when we were kids. You had to take your life so seriously. You were told, unless you went to college or university, as we call it here, get a qualification or a trade, you're basically going to end up being a dead shit and being dependent on Social Security or something like that. Isn't it a marvelous thing that you've been able to carve a career? Yes, you've had the perseverance, but you've also taken advantage of the luck that has happened along the way too. You've been smart enough to do that. So you're an example. And I've said this same thing to Tony, actually. People say you can't do it. Dino's doing it. Tony's doing it. You guys are doing it. You're actually out there doing it. So rather than music is something that is actually a legitimate career pathway, if you do the hard yards, sure, and if you learn along the way too, and you got to be creative.
Yeah, Tony went through a lot of stuff when he was putting Static X back together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He went through a lot of stuff, man. I was like reading those comments, like, wow. Yeah, I'm definitely going through a lot of that stuff too, but that's what. So c'est la vie, So it is life. That's how it is,
Look, I had a Reddit thread created about me the other day on the podcast. I get it, and that's a tiny bit, nothing compared to what you've experienced, but I get it a tiny bit. When people, they create this stuff, and mine wasn't even that bad, to be honest with you. It just shocked me that someone would think anything of what I do here with my podcast to even do something like that. But the scale that you must get it, at some point in time, you've just had to, I imagine, you've just had to tune out and just do what Joe Rogan does, which is not read any comments. But then you said you were doing the social media thing a lot, so you must read a lot. You must read a lot.
Yeah, I do read a lot. I do actually start seeing a shift, believe it or not. I started seeing a shift of comments not being so as negative as before. I think, when Bert announced his departure, it was a big shock to people, right? To people who didn't know. It was a big shock to them. And I think that they were just reacting. That's how they were grieving, and they reacted, and they were just taking it out all on me, right? But it was okay. I handle it. I been through it, and I expect more of it. You know what I mean? Because as things start to change, some people fear change. Some people fear. I don't. As soon as we announce that new singer, again, I want to put out a new track. I want to introduce them, maybe a live stream, so people can see right there, and we can hopefully get past all the bullshit.
Yeah,
boom.
I think that'll happen. But the thing is that it alludes to too, and you of course you remember this, 1996 in Sydney, a riot
Yes.
because you couldn't go on stage. People feel very strongly about what you're doing and what Fear Factory represents.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was because Burton lost his voice in Brisbane the night before. Well, actually, he couldn't. Actually, it was I think it was the Gold Coast he lost his voice. Then by the time we got to Brisbane, he couldn't play. Right? He couldn't sing. So the crowd sang. And then by the time we got to Sydney, the promoter didn't tell. I guess the promoter was hoping that Bert's voice would come back somehow. But we actually had taken him to the doctor. And the doctor said, no, you shouldn't. You got to rest that thing for a couple of weeks. Right? So for some reason, the promoter let the university know kind of like that day, like a few hours before the show was supposed to start. There's actually a queue out there, and all you see when this lady put up a sign in front of the glass door. She put up a sign, show canceled. So you got like 100 kids out there waiting in line. They're like, what the fuck? They wanted answers, but there was nobody there to give them answers. So they took it out on the university.
That was main. Do you remember that? That was on. That was like the leading news item that night. The riot.
Of course, I had to stay back. Everybody flew to England. I stayed back and I did publicity, and it was like, I guess they would call it cleanup, right? I had to stay back and I had to like mellow out all the controversy, right? And it was really cool because I got to do the news stations. I got to do news, all the national newspapers, every magazine you can think of. It opened doors for us for other magazines. Like we were getting like articles in like fashion magazines. Like what the fuck? It's because everybody wanted to hear the story. So it got us a lot of exposure.
Was that one of the first? Was that one of the most compelling milestones you think in your career with the media?
I would say no, because back in the beginning, when Soul of a New Machine first came out, back in the UK, I was getting a lot of racist stuff. You know,
really?
because of my nationality. You know, it's just I think it was just I don't know what it was, but I was just getting made fun of just being Mexican all the time. So that was like something that I had to deal with. That was a little bit more harder than dealing with the university riot.
I had no idea about that one there. That's yeah. Okay.
I called out a few magazines. I don't want to mention them now, but I called out a few magazines back then, but it just fell on deaf ears because I don't know, racism wasn't that big of a topic, I guess, back then, or it wasn't anything that maybe now if it happened, forget it. Maybe cancel culture, right? But back then it was like I called out a few magazines. I even like threatened to fight some of the journalists and stuff like that.
No, good on you. Yeah. No, you got to look, honestly, to be honest with you, you've got to do that. I've learned I went through a Southern boarding school, so I get it. If you don't put up, they don't shut up. Unfortunately.
I've had guns pulled on me for being, Mexican in other parts of the United States. I've experienced a lot of stuff. So, but it's definitely 100%. That was only in the beginning of Soul of a New Machine that stuff really happened.
Hispanic culture, and I mean, extreme metal was virtually invented in South America through Volcano and Sarcophago. And I was just talking to a bartender in the city the other day about this stuff. Max and Igor predate Chuck and Death. People don't know that. But the point about that is the whole, satanic Hispanic thing with the Slayer fans and the Destruction fans. Mexico, Destruction, Sodom, and bands like that they've never gone away in Mexico either. Mexico is actually very similar to Germany.
Yeah.
I've got to say, mate, that shocks the hell out of me that you went through that from the perspective that heavy metal is a universal language. Jello Biafra talked about that too. He talked about how he'd never seen anything like what you guys are doing. And I think he mentioned Morbid Angel by name. Morbid Angel are by far my favorite band, I've got to say. I love Morbid Angel so much I've even interviewed Trey's mum. I reached out to her, lovely lady.
Because you wanted to get real answers.
I'm actually a journalist. I'm legitimately a journalist. I've been to university and got a bachelor's degree in journalism. So, and I'm not saying that to big note myself. I'm just saying I want to get to the bottom of things. I like that. I like that investigative side of things. And you can't do that unless you talk to people directly. And if people aren't prepared, first of all, treat people.
There's another band who had to deal with adversities with losing a singer.
Morbid Angel.
Yeah.
Well, they're the underground. They're the kingpins of the underground, Morbid Angel, and Trey's always known that, and I think he's always got his musicians from the underground. I've been talking quite a bit to Eric Rutan. I'm trying to twist his arm into doing his biography. Yeah, Eric's
great musician, fucking amazing musician, Eric Rutan. Fuck, that's all I gotta say.
I'd love to see you do a record.
Great producer. If I were to do a record with him, it'd probably be for Asesino.
Please do it. I mean, God, I think Eric and yourself, and I've got to lay this title on you: the statesmen of our genre, the people who are at the front line, representing, talking, willing to engage with the fans, and are intelligent and articulate. And that's the thing that's always bugged me about extreme metal, and I am going to put you guys into this, is that it's looked at as a goons genre by people who have no understanding of it. But I think when people hear you and they hear Eric, and
I got a good story about Eric. Me and Eric, we did a tour together. I think it was 2012, 2013. It was for the in Industrialist tour, and we brought Hate Eternal out with us.
Nice.
Fucking amazing band, right? Anyway, so Eric was like, when we get to Florida, Dino, I'm going to take you this thing called Taco Bus. I'm like, Taco Bus? He goes, yeah, it's a bus converted into it was actually we didn't sit in the bus, we sit outside the bus, but they had a school bus converted into a restaurant. It's called Taco Bus. I'm like, oh my God. So we took us there and we all went there. We all sat down and this food was fucking amazing. This Mexican food was amazing. But they had a salsa to die for. Whatever there was they made in that salsa, it was like, my God, I got to have that. And I told Eric, if you can get me a case of this salsa, I'll give you a free amp. I'll give you a free Kemper. It's Kemper profiling amplifier. And he goes, okay, perfect. I could use that in the studio. I'm like, yeah, perfect. So I gave him one. And then we got home, like literally a week and a half later, he sent me a whole case in dry ice of this Taco Bus salsa. And I was like, hell yeah. And we literally started the next tour like a couple of weeks later. So I had all this Taco Bus salsa in the refrigerator on the bus, and we were just all really enjoying it. And I was like, thanks, Eric. Fucking, he came through.
He came through on his promise.
Yeah, he had to wait for them to bottle it so he could send it to me. That's what took him so long.
Being Florida, it must be Cuban, is it? Cuban in origin?
No, it's not Cuban. It's Mexican.
Oh, Mexican.
Mexican food. Mexican food, yes.
I don't think I could leave it on a better note than talking about tacos and Eric Rutan. So there you go. That was the man, Dino Cazares from Fear Factory. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of this podcast series, Scars and Guitars, and I appreciate that you've tuned in. Until next time, thanks.